Deterioration is a process that starts from an absolute state of vitality that you're in and slowly deteriorate. There is deterioration going on. Just because you haven't been diagnosed with a disease doesn't mean you're not on a pathway to disease. Your life is a story. You got to weave that story. Take the learning lessons from everything that happens in your life and reflect on them. If you don't build that time for reflection, they don't become part of your story.
On today's episode, general practitioner and the founder of Human, Dr. E. Dr. E,
Dana, how are you?
thank you so much for joining me today. I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well this morning.
Amazing. So, how would you best describe what you do?
What we do at Human, so I'm a doctor myself, and what we do is engineer human potential by looking at people's biology.
That's incredible. How do you do that?
Through deep data collection. So we look at internal biological processes that contribute ultimately to how we experience the world. Right? So we are a vehicle. This human body is a vehicle, and we put fuel in it. We take nutrients from our air and our food and our environment. Then we have internal processes within our human body to take those nutrients out, deliver them to our cells, and our cells do the work and provide us with energy, vitality, mood, immunity. And so what I'm in the field of doing is looking at the human body, understanding the processes that go on at any given time, trying to find imbalances or areas to improve or support those processes to ultimately make you feel the best you can to engage with the world in the best possible way. That's what we do.
Okay. It's very, I think, very relevant to this time and age because everyone seems to be so health focused. And I'm loving this trend. But I often reflect that, in my parents' generation, for example, there wasn't this whole focus and this whole trend of looking after your health as something that you integrate in your daily basis. It's more like, okay, there's work, there's this to do, and you sleep. But none of what we have now, which are these, Oura rings, whoops, intolerance based diets, functional mushrooms, and you name it. There's a very long list of that. And I'm loving this time in history that we're in because people seem to have really realized that health is wealth.
I think you're absolutely right. We are definitely at a point of time where we value and appreciate that we can modulate our experience of the world through modulating what goes in and how we control our environment. And it's a great time. It's a great time to be a doctor, especially if you're a doctor that's thinking in that way. And as a doctor, what we do is we take science and we apply it to the human in front of us, right? And what we're seeing is this massive rise in developments in the scientific understanding, particularly around engineering human performance or the human state. And that has led to a whole host of interventions that you just mentioned, from functional mushrooms, red light therapy, cryotherapy, breathing techniques, cold plant, you name it. There's so much. And as a doctor, what I need to do is understand how to prescribe the right strategy for you using the tools that are available to you based on where you are as a human and where you want to be as a human. And that requires sometimes educating you on blind spots. Obviously, that's why you come to an expert like me, where we will be educating you on things that you don't see about yourself that you may not have identified as areas to improve or to work on.
Today's episode is brought to you by everyone's favorite kombucha, Momo. Aside being a super healthy and delicious drink that I enjoy having, the reason why I wanted to partner with Momo is the story behind it. A family-owned business, locally brewed and handmade, Momo is the fruit of the hard work of Josh and Lisa, who both quit their corporate jobs in order to create something they believed would create a good impact in the world. When I visited their brewery and saw with how much care each bottle was prepared and how much each one of their team members enjoyed working there and believed in their mission, I knew that that's the type of people that I want to work with. Check out their website for more information and use the discount code ISTHISIT15 to get the 15% off of your first order.
And helping you put those interventions into a system of care that's doable and achievable for you. There's no point me prescribing you a list of interventions that you're unable to do, because there's a commonly stated fact that up to 90% of prescriptions are not completed. Right? We have the best will as a patient to take a prescription. Yeah, I'll do this, doc, don't worry. But the reality of life, the motivation, the things get in the way, our old habits, our wiring sometimes prevents us from doing that. So it's a combination of understanding the human and appreciating the human for its limitations
and for its natural abilities as well.
Absolutely.
I think what we're talking about is really enhancing what is, rather than doing kind of the opposite and working on the flaws,
or waiting till things are really bad.
Yeah, exactly.
And then broken down.
I'm a big fan of preventative health, preventative medicine, and this whole concept of working on things before crisis really occurs. So in your talks, you often speak about how flawed the health system is. So what do you think it should look like?
I think the health system is wonderful, actually, for what it is designed to deliver. Let's exclude the crisis that the NHS is in at the moment, under the current leadership of the government and the strikes that are happening. Let's exclude that. But the design of the health system as it currently is, what it's mandated to do is to treat the diseases that we're educated as health professionals to look out for. And it does that, in the mandate of keeping you alive as best as it can. When you have a sickness that fits a box and a criteria that we're trained in, that goes back to 70s, 80s, 90s, and even earlier. The evolution of healthcare needs to happen now, and is happening now, where we start to engage with and extend the definition of disease. So it's not just, oh, you're really sick and you've got a heart disease, and that means you've got a blockage in a blood vessel, or your pancreas is not producing enough insulin, you've got diabetes. But let's extend that to pre-disease. Okay? Deterioration is a process that starts from an absolute state of vitality that you're in and slowly deteriorate. There is deterioration going on. Just because you haven't been diagnosed with a disease doesn't mean you're not on a pathway to disease. That's the reality of the human being. We are pre-programmed to ultimately deteriorate, and we have a peak in our state of health.
When is it?
Probably in our mid to late 20s. When you look at it from a longevity perspective, that's when we produce, that's when we peak in the stem cell production, that our regenerative capacity is its highest. That's when our mitochondrial function is at its strongest.
For people that are listening and do not know the word mitochondria.
Mitochondria is one of my favorite organelles. It's a structure within each of our cells. And we as a human being are a collection of trillions of cells. Okay, and those cells self-replicate and self-organize, and we replace ourselves as a human body as a whole, on average every few years. And so there's this constant reproductive capacity going on within the human body at all times. So that's one aspect. And then the mitochondria aspect is within each cell, you have the engine of the cell. The engine of the cell is the mitochondria. And what that means is that it takes oxygen from our environment, or if you don't have oxygen, it has other sources, and it ultimately produces energy. And the fuel currency of each cell is ATP, and that's what it produces. Okay? So the energy for the cell to do the work comes from the mitochondria, right? And it requires certain nutrients, and it requires oxygen for the most amount of energy production. Without the presence of oxygen, we don't survive, and that's because the mitochondria cannot produce the fuel for the cells to do the work, but therefore the organs to do the work that it needs to do, including the brain, the digestive tract, etc., etc.
So how do we give it oxygen?
So great question. So there's two things to optimize there. One is obviously the most simple thing, breathing. Really
breathing correctly, doing the
breathing
breathing
correct.
exercises, breathing through the diaphragm.
Absolutely, expanding your chest properly, etc. So that's one aspect.
Breathing clean air as well.
Yeah, we're in London right now, but yeah, breathing clean air. And then the other is making sure that we've got enough of the core nutrients to take the oxygen out and work through the mitochondria. So a lot of them, your B vitamins, are really, really important for mitochondrial function. You may come across NAD plus. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Yeah, amazing. And so that's one of my favorite recent findings within nutritional medicine and science, that NAD plus has been really shown to make a massive difference to cellular performance and energy production at a cellular level. So it's key nutrients, oxygenation. Then the other thing to consider is, have we got a good blood supply? How do we maintain a healthy blood supply? So how do we deliver oxygen to our cells? Through the plumbing. And our plumbing are our blood vessels and our heart. The heart is the pump. And so how do we make sure that we've got a good, healthy blood supply, exercising, movement, okay?
How do I check whether I have a good blood supply?
You can do tests for that. There are tests that you can do that look at, the biomarker testing that you could look at, which looks at the certain biological markers for inflammation within the blood vessel lining to see if it's stiffening. And therefore, when they start to stiffen, they stop to deliver blood around the tissues as efficiently. There are other tests you can check for lung capacity. Cardiopulmonary exercise testing, like VO2 max testing, where you're on an exercise bike and you're seeing how much oxygen you can deliver, understanding your metabolic rate, which is how much energy you expend in just being before you add on movement and exercise and other things. Those are the kind of tests that you would look at if you're really interested in that. You can also then test for associated cellular processes that we can or might have some individual variation in, and that's called metabolomics. So metabolomic testing is looking at breakdown products of certain cellular processes. This is where we're really getting scientific when we're looking at our patients, when we work with them. And that will give us a real understanding if those cellular processes directly related to mitochondrial function, for example, are working efficiently, and where for you those cellular processes may not be working. And that's when you're looking at the 1 to 5% gains in people. That's the kind of testing we're doing on our athletes, our CEOs, our executives,
high performers.
People that have kind of typically put their body through a huge amount and their mind through a huge amount, and they've set themselves up for that, and they're looking to understand either they're burning out, they're feeling not as peak state as they have previously, or they're looking to achieve something. They're working towards a world championship title. They're working to something, and they're coming to us to get to find those nuances within their,
because 1% can result in a win or a loss, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's really fine margins. It's really fine margins. And the beautiful thing about this approach is that it's really simple nutrient and nutritional interventions most of the time, but targeted.
Something that pops into my mind right now is, I guess, people that want to do all the fancy things before they've done all the fundamental things. So I guess it's worth saying that, somebody that does not sleep, does not eat well, eat junk food all day, does not exercise, they need to earn their right to come to you or do similar procedures. It's not like you can just go somewhere, get an injection or do a bit of cryotherapy and then all your problems will be solved. You need to do the fundamentals. Nothing can replace that. And then you build on that, which is how you were saying, it's fine tuning your results.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the
Do you find people coming to you and expecting miracles?
of course, from time to time, right? And however, I'm just so pleased they're coming to me in the first place. For me, that's amazing that they're taking a step towards engaging with their health. The fact they're picking up a phone call, the fact that they're sending an email or whatever it is, they're already to me on a journey. And even if they haven't taken that step of making those changes, the fact they're just reaching out is a step, and they should be encouraged and congratulated on that step, because it's in those little steps that you continue building that long-term change is made. Um, and so I agree with you. The foundations on sleeping, on eating, on moving, etc., are really important. But sometimes people find themselves in a really difficult place, right? Where they may have taken on too much, and or their ability to handle all of that stuff has gone down. And we can unlock a lot by just doing some testing and understanding that their hormonal base has gone out of whack. Their adrenal glands are tired. The thyroid's not producing enough.
And you tell all
energy
that by
current
the
for cells.
tests.
Yeah, you can test from just a blood test. You can really find out a lot. It's remarkable.
And then it's fixed by supplements or by nutrition?
Medication, supplements, nutrition. And once you start to support those processes, that gives them a little bit to then do a bit more, right? Sleep is interesting because many people don't get into the deep sleep. They may stay in bed for a longer period of time, but they may not be getting into the deep regenerative sleep, so they can be waking up groggy. And actually, as we get older, what happens to our quality of sleep? It decreases, right? We actually reduce the amount of deep
Is it
sleep.
because of the stress?
No, I'm not sure. I think it's just part of the aging process. I'm talking about, it could be related to stress as well, and our ability to handle stress. But I think just generally our ability to get into deep sleep decreases.
Interesting, because with time, our ability to handle stress should go up, but so do the amount of stress that we've gone through. So if we don't find a way to unclutter the mind and the heart from the stressors from the past, then I think it can be a problem, because the ability should increase over time as you get more resilient.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you would think, right? But the reality is that the biological components to handle stress,
which are,
and the processes, hormonal balance, nutrient delivery, digestion, appropriately removing the nutrients out of your food, delivering them through an effective blood supply to your cells, your balance, your orchestra, your biological orchestra goes out of balance, right, over time. When it goes out of balance, your ability to handle stress decreases. And we think handle stress is like a superpower, like we have to be able to handle stress.
A lot of people market it that way.
Right.
I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs say the number one thing if you want to be a great entrepreneur is your ability to handle stress. Yeah. How many times I've heard this?
Right. And so you end up putting more and more stress on you. So there's a stress you take on, and then there's the environmental stress. Okay.
The toxins.
Yeah, that's an example of one. Yeah, toxins, the blue light exposure, the screen exposure, the WhatsApp, the social media, all of those pulses of kind of notifications that we're getting, constantly producing a stress response, which is further pushing our balance, our hormonal balance out, our kind of orchestra balance out, which makes our resilience go down. Our biological resilience goes down over time. Right.
And we need to help it.
Right. You need to help it, and then you need to kind of protect it. And we need to appreciate that the human body is designed to create energy, and then you use that energy for your functioning, thinking, digesting, all of these processes going on. And so the preservation of energy is actually the secret behind handling more stress or taking on things, right? Preserving your energetic state.
How do I do that?
In every moment of the day you think about, is this a worthwhile use of my energy?
Okay.
Yeah. And this is what we're teaching our high performers, our boxers that are kind of expending energy, breaking out with cold sores when they're coming to me the week of their fight. That shouldn't be happening. Why is that happening? Respond to those signs, appreciate, understand that, everything that you're putting your body through if it's not serving you at that time, those thought processes, those raising your tone, getting louder or getting angry at any given moment, or engaging in a discussion that's not really relevant, you have to understand that you've got to preserve your energy to perform when you want your energy on point. Otherwise, you're depleting yourself prior to the point where you want to peak.
Kind of like pick your battles, right?
Absolutely.
In relationships.
100%. Be strategic.
Mm.
Be strategic about what you want to give and when you want to give. When do you want to peak? Even on a day-to-day basis. Today, when do I want to peak? Okay, how do I plan for that peak? And that planning starts the night before, the week before. And then you start to think about what food you're going to have, what, you know, who in your environment, the stressful people, you're not going to engage with them during that time when you want, before you want to peak, because you want to preserve your energy. Maybe after the peak is okay. But does that make sense? All of these things that take away energy
makes all the sense in the world. And I like to say also with my coaching clients and with my friends and everybody else that your job is to really remove the unnecessary. Less is more. There's so many things that we're doing that are not to be done. They don't add any value to your life. Exactly as you said. Why are you overthinking about this? Why are you raising your voice? Why are you doing something for longer than you're supposed to be doing? Why are you doing this in the first place if it's not really actually serving you? Examine your habits, examine your thought patterns, examine your behaviors, and cut the noise. Crap, cut the necessary. And you'll have automatically so much space for everything else, for what you want to happen, for what you want to achieve, for who you want to see. But it starts with the declutter, the removal.
I like that. And the state awareness. Let's add to that.
Awareness. I literally, yesterday came my new solo episode where I speak about awareness.
Oh, fantastic.
It's a superpower. It's an absolute superpower. And all starts with awareness. All the changes you want to make, all the goals you want to achieve, any sort of progress you want to have, all of that starts with awareness. That's your ground zero. That's a starting point. That's your space where anything can happen in the space of awareness. Without it, it's like you're moving in autopilot. You're not really sure why things are happening. You're reacting to impulses constantly instead of taking that gap, the impulse. They say that between an impulse and a reaction, there's choice. And you can only exercise that choice if you're present in the moment and aware of what's happening. So blessed be awareness.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's the first step to any significant improvement. And often when I'm kind of, sometimes we get people come in that want to work with us, and that they're not coming in themselves. And if they're being kind of brought in by someone, what we're looking for is how aware they are of themselves. Because if they're not willing to kind of, if they're not in that state where they're aware of the problem and they want to change that problem, they're not going to be able to make the lifestyle changes, the choices, as you said, between the impulse and reaction, day to day, to get the outcome that they want, and that's when they go to the traditional medical system. They'll wait till they have a significant problem. Drugs and surgery will be the temporary relief they'll get, but it's not going to get to the underlying issues. It's not going to allow them to elevate their human experience.
So if we talk about health optimization, what do you think should be a part of everyone's self-care routine by now?
Okay, so let's break it down we can break it down into how we sleep, how we eat, how we move, and how we control our stress response. Okay. So in terms of eating, let's start with sleeping. In terms of sleeping, I think, be conscious, be aware of that it's super important to sleep, and it's super important to try and get into deep regenerative sleep. Simple things you could do, like blackout blinds, limiting your blue light exposure. And you might commonly hear that your sleep routine starts from the first thing in the morning, right? Because that's the way our hormones work. We run on a body clock called the circadian rhythm, which correlates to our ability to produce energy first thing in the morning, and it should come right down our cortisol production should come right down in the evening to allow our melatonin to increase, which will help us fall asleep nicely and get into deep sleep.
Let me just interject 1 second, because I think it's very important to point something out there. As you were saying what you were saying, I immediately remember all the times that in the evening I'm like, oh, why do I not have the energy? I still need to do some work. I need to get this get done, that get done. And what you just told me is actually, thank God that I have these mechanisms in my body that don't give me the energy in the evening, that make me tired in the evening, because that then allows me to sleep, which allows me to regenerate, which allows me to have the energy the next day to then perform the next day. So had I not had that, there would be no continuation and I couldn't work the next day. So just wanted to point that out, because sometimes I feel quite a few people can get frustrated that their body is not giving them everything all the time and performing always like they want to. But there's a reason.
Yeah, you can't always be on, right?
Yeah.
And that's when you start to confuse the body as well. When you start to kind of then put in stimulants at times when when it wants to rest, you're drinking coffee, you're having other types of stimulants to either get worked on or to socialize it late at night, etc. And that will dysregulate your ability to then peak when you want to peak, and then your body starts to get confused. If you can track your sleep, get yourself an Oura ring or a Whoop and look at your stages of sleep and understand whether you're getting into your deep sleep and your REM sleep, or if the majority of your sleep is light sleep and therefore not regenerative. So those are some of the things that come in. Other things that impact your ability to fall asleep is having food late at night. So give 2 to 3 hours after your last meal before going to bed. Because if you eat too close to bedtime, then a lot of energy is going to digestion, and that's going to stop you falling asleep. A bit like if you drink alcohol. After drinking alcohol, you typically will have very light sleep, because a lot of the processed energy is going to detox the alcohol, to fight the toxins, to get rid of them, to clear them.
So that's why when I used to drink, I used to wake up much earlier than normal.
You just will have a really poor sleep. Yeah, light sleep, and in poor non-regenerative sleep. It's also a neurotoxin, right? So your cells within your brain actually get inflamed. Yeah, and so that's why in the short term, when you drink alcohol, you're a bit discombobulated. You slow down, your reflexes slow down, and you start to kind of have behavioral changes, and that's that's why a lot of people drink for that to kind of let off steam, and to feel a bit looser and more relaxed. But in fact, what they're doing is putting a toxin into their brain cells. Some people, it's actually killing their brain cells because it's too much of a toxin. So you can get cell death with that from drinking alcohol, of course. So that's we talked about sleep. We can go on to talking about should we go and talk about relationship with food?
Yes, please.
So there's a couple of things here with relationship with food. Think of it about the type of foods that you're eating for the desired performance that you want to have from the body, and think of it from the other part of how effective is your digestive tract, and how can you support it to ensure that you are digesting and breaking down your foods adequately. And so behaviors on that side of making sure that you chew your food for long enough, leaving space within, for water, a third water, a third food, a third air, when you're having a meal. So leaving some space in your stomach, ideally. Chewing is super important. Producing the right salivary enzymes to start to break down the food.
It's so funny you say that. I remember when I was a kid, my mom used to say, 50 times you should chew the bite of the food. Yeah. It's so many things we kind of know, at least like I remember from my childhood, that have been taught, but somehow we forget them.
Yeah. And eat sitting, that's something that's
really
is it
really
bad
simple. To eat on the go?
You don't digest as well. Yeah, you don't digest as well. Mindful eating, a practice of mindful eating is really, really important. And mindful eating is just like slowing down the process of eating and not gulping things down. And we're all guilty of it from time to time. It does happen, but just like slowing things down, being more aware even when you're eating. Yeah.
I actually mentioned that as well.
Yeah. And then walking after food is really important. Trying to get 2-3 minutes of walking is shown to be very, very effective for longevity and long-term health.
What is that after the meal?
After the meal, yeah.
2 or 3 minutes?
Yeah, so some kind of physical activity, not strenuous, but just light walking, can really help digest your food better as well. And then the types of food. I mean, that's a podcast in itself, right? So, but just the simple principles around if it's God made versus man made. Man made foods that have additives and things that preservatives that keep it alive for longer and keep it edible for longer are synthetic, and therefore the load to clear those out, even though we have processes within our body to clear them out, you're adding a lot of load to clear them out. So you're loading up your liver to be able to detox and making it harder for it. And so just be conscious and aware of that, and try to go to more natural foods, fruits, vegetables, meats as well, if you're that way inclined. So those are just some of the simple principles around food that's a good starting point. Be conscious of what you're putting your body through during a day or during a week, and try and preparing the types of foods you're having for the desired performance of that, of how you want to perform. So you might have seen just before this podcast, I had a ginger shot and I had some banana. Okay, because I knew that for this podcast I want to have a bit of short-acting carbohydrates from the glucose from the banana, and I like the ginger. It gives me a nice cognitive alertness. So there are the relationship with food is, look at it as fuel, and then you'll start to kind of affect your choices. Blood sugar as well is really important as well. So it's the other thing to consider is that if you're getting a lot of energy slumps after your meals, then start to think about the types of carbs that you're having that may be causing those energy slumps.
Do I have to get that thing?
Which thing?
That thing that people put on their...
The patch?
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. Those are data points in the real time, I think, that are really helpful if you're coached in the right way.
How long do you need to wear that?
It's a 2-week patch. And if you are having energy slumps, what's really fascinating is that everyone responds to different foods differently. So it used to be thought that we had a glycemic index of food. So we were told that this food will cause this glycemic response in the majority of the population, and that's what we understood. But with the advent of glucose monitoring, we're now seeing that you and I respond differently to blueberries or strawberries or bananas.
Interesting.
Okay, so there is individual variation in certain foods that may be spiking our blood sugar too much, because after the blood sugar spike comes an insulin spike. And what affects insulin spikes is excess stress response. So internal stress response. If we're putting ourselves under a lot of stress and we have an internal physiological response to stress that's constantly activated, guess what? London does that to us, and the modern life does that to us, then that keeps your blood sugar high, because your body's like, I need to keep energy up to my cells and tissues and brain to manage all the stress. And then thereafter you develop something called insulin resistance, where your cells and tissues become resistant to the insulin that your body's producing to bring your blood sugar down. Yeah. If that happens for a longer sustained period, then you stop reacting to your insulin and your blood sugar just stays high. You get diabetes, type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes. And we're seeing it so much. Before we used to think it was all food related. Now we understand it's stress related.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Diabetes is stress related.
As well as food related. Yeah, but we're now seeing a lot more stress related. People are having really good diets, but they're still having high fasting blood sugar levels, high fasting insulin levels, which is a sign that they've got insulin resistance. And so we're seeking to reverse all of that. There's ways to reverse that if you're catching it early enough. And so the glucose monitor is a really good way to kind of identify which foods are triggering it for you.
So what do you do in those 2 weeks that you do it? You just need to eat put into different foods and test what
just
works?
just be normal, just
Mm.
be normal, live your life normally, but then just check the data, have a look, see what foods are spiking your blood sugar, or what times your blood sugar spiking, or what people are spiking your blood sugar. That's an interesting one, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
how and how am I responding from a stress response?
Never to be seen in his family's presence again.
Bless, and you can correlate that to also other markers, all right? So your heart rate variability, your body temperature. Yeah, so these are really useful. And often people say to me, "It's like, Doc, I'm really interested in doing this, but I'm worried that I'll become paranoid."
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, and I think until you start doing it and just understanding what those markers are doing, um, I think don't be scared of it, and don't allow yourself to become kind of excessively worried about it, but use it as a way to kind of learn about yourself, how your body's responding to your environment, and then make those micro changes. So when you drink, you see your heart rate variability go down and your REM go down. Maybe you'll drink less or you drink earlier in the day. And make those micro changes.
Interesting.
Yeah,
it becomes a very interesting self project.
Absolutely, and we are, if there's any kind of purpose to be on this universe, is to kind of learn about and master ourselves.
100% agree on that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned nutrition, sleep, a stress response, and there was a fourth one.
Yes, movement. Yeah, so movement's super important. Just some simple principles: break a sweat 2 to 3 times a week. Try and get your 12,000 steps in a day. Depending on where you're at, on your kind of movement journey. But breaking a sweat is super important. Getting yourself into that high intensity period to allow yourself to break a sweat is really key. Depends where you're at. Depends. Everyone's slightly different. So what I am seeing, interestingly, is that people over moving as well. Okay.
I was just about to ask about that.
Yeah. So people overtraining. Training is an inflammatory process as well. And sometimes you need to allow your body to restore. So having the restorative balance is very important to be able to perform and get the goals that you want to get in hypertrophy or density of muscle, or could be lung capacity, VO2 max, or preparing for a marathon. And I'm seeing that with the highest world elite athletes. Like I said, one of the examples of a boxer coming to me and they just, when they're weak fight, breaking out with cold sores, and then telling me about this. I'm like, that's a major sign that you've overinflamed your body. And if your resilience has gone down biologically, that your viruses that are normally dormant are now showing, and that's a sign that your energy availability is not there. You're not repleting, and that needs to happen restoratively with sleep, but also through our diet as well, and our stress management. Okay, so you can see how we're in this balance that we're trying to achieve, this flow state. We're broken down what this flow state is, and how to get into the desired flow state, so that you can peak in the right places and the right times.
Very nice. I was going to ask you, what are your personal pillars to a healthy life? So I guess it would be for sure these 4. Is there anything else?
Absolutely. It's letting go, acceptance, accepting things, and letting go of things that may have troubled me. Right. Again, it's part of that.
Let go of the unnecessary.
Yeah, it's part of the energy paradigm. Preservation of energy. I think that another thing is, for me, spirituality. Spiritual practice. I enjoy that as well. And connecting to a greater purpose, a raison d'etre that's bigger than me, and trying to understand and make sense of creation individually, but the equation of creation generally, which I think is a lifelong journey. But I really enjoy that.
What is your purpose?
What is my individual purpose? I mean, I think we get caught up in our individual purposes a lot, because that's our ego drives that sense of like needing to, I don't know, have a individual set purpose, but I believe that we're part of a collective purpose, which we all individually have a role to play, um,
What is that collective purpose?
to serve each other, to make the world a better place, to kind of create more balance in the world, between justice, injustice. We can't argue that some people are less fortunate than others. We're definitely in the more fortunate end of the spectrum, um, and if there's if there if there ever were to be, and a lot of religions will say there's going to be a time where we're going to be questioned on what we did with our time. I think the questions will be around to the people that are more fortunate, say, how did you put some of your energy towards creating more balance or opportunity for those that are less fortunate? I think that's what, if there ever was to be a questioning, that would be one of the kind of things that will be questioned on, and the questions will be to those that are more fortunate. And I do believe that privilege is a responsibility, and I don't think that we're taught that enough in our society. Um, and yeah, we're just like, yeah. So I think that kind of is something that I've always been taught and thought about.
What are your spiritual practices?
Um, I'm Muslim by faith, and I've grown closer to being Muslim. And being Muslim means someone that submits, and someone that submits a a single creator of the universe, and belief that the Quran is a set of messages that have come directly from God. And so I've been spending a lot more time understanding, and do spend a bit of time understanding the scriptures, but also looking at the creator, that he's sent messages from the dawn of time through thousands of messengers, actually. And so it's not, we are, but there's one creator that's communicated to all of humanity. It's not, any religion isn't just for one set of people. It's for all people. It's for all of us. It's for all humans. All races, colors, creeds. Not Christianity is not just something for Europeans. Or originally Europeans, or etc. So that journey to understand whether those messages, how they've evolved over time, from our creator, is the journey that at time I come in and out of, going through, and I think that's a lifelong journey. I think the design of life is really interesting, that we all go through hardships in different kind of amounts, relativities, but we all go through different stages. We're all going to face loss. We're all going to probably most likely face financial challenges. We're all going to face health deterioration.
Most definitely.
We're all going to face all similar challenges, and through all of those challenges, the opportunities to learn about yourself, but to learn about others around you. There's always opportunities to reflect and get to know your creator, and look around and marvel at the universe, and marvel at the growth of this plant, and growth of the different animals, and submission of animals to man. There's just so much to marvel at in terms of creation. And I think that the creator just wants us to kind of get to really know him and appreciate him, and serve him through serving his creations.
Yes, that resonates with me a lot, and I share the same awe for all that is, and all the natural beauty. And I think your energy, even when I met you, it really transpires the calmness that you have, this peace within. And I wonder if that's for thanks to your spiritual practices, and thanks to all the introspective work that you've done over the time. If I asked you to share a couple of very precious life lessons that you've accumulated over the years, what would you share?
I would share one that go with the flow. And this is just my experience of life so far. Sometimes you can push uphill. Something can feel like you're pushing water uphill, and you should respond to that and appreciate that, and say maybe it's not the right time for what I'm projecting that I'm expecting to get from whatever that effort is, and take a step back and reflect and look around and pause, because sometimes we can be so caught up in that windmill and that tornado, and we think that, okay, I need to have this result by this time, and but it's so hard, it's not working, everything's not working, everything's falling apart, and it's not. There is a flow, and there is a flow that will either support what you're doing, or it's not at the right time. And I feel like go with the flow is something that I've learned to do a lot more, and just accept things as things come up, and just let go of things. Still, but go in the direction that you want to go in, and still work hard, but go with the flow. I think that's been a really important life lesson to me, that I'm constantly reminding myself of, because obviously we constantly have to be self-aware of that. The other thing is, don't beat yourself up. Sometimes we beat ourselves up too much. We have this idea that we need to be this perfect human being. We need to eat the cleanest, we need to move the best, we need to sleep, we need to do all these things. That's just on the health side. We need to maintain all these relationships and be perfect and never get angry, never get upset, and never get stressed. And this is all part of the human experience. And then it comes onto part of the letting go and acceptance part. Accept yourself, love yourself, right? Because and appreciate yourselves for just thinking in that way. And progress is never 0 to 1. It's not binary. It's I look at it as the average, right? So as long as you're generally trending in the right direction, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Right? You may have the blips. You're gonna have blips. Accept them. Expect them, yeah. But don't let the blips turn into kind of downward spirals, because sometimes when you try and tell yourself you need to be perfect, and then you fall away from that, and then you start beating yourself up, you end up in a place where it takes you much longer to get back on track. So in that moment where you slip, just accept it and say, I'm just human, and try and make the slips less frequent, and to make the slips last for a shorter period of time. So those are my kind of few bits of advice from
Love
what
that.
I've
Thank
learned.
you. I want to talk a little bit more about your professional journey. So what jobs have you done, and how have they contributed to what you're doing now?
Everything contributes, right? And that, when I was younger, I was probably in my early 20s. I had a couple of mentors that just came into my life, or I sought after, and through having good conversations with them. One of the best pieces of advice, that probably was actually in my late teens as well, was given, is that your life is a story. You got to weave that story. And what I took away from that, what that meant was, take the learning lessons from everything that happens in your life and reflect on them. And if you don't build that time for reflection and learning and seeing the things that you're developing during that time, they don't become part of your story. Okay? So for me, everything in my life is part of my story. And the things that I've done, I've worked in a market stall when I was, my parents had a market stall. They used to manufacture leather jackets, and then my dad's business collapsed, and he had a laundrette, and I worked in a laundrette washing people's clothes. That was part of my story. Then I worked in, then I worked in Next during the summer sale, and that was part of my journey when I was 16. And then I worked in Carphone Warehouse in a mobile phone store throughout medical school. That was part of my retail, getting in front of clients and trying to explain them, get things, try to deliver value to them in a language that they understood. That became part of my story. And is all of those experiences are very relevant to what I'm doing now today. And then being at medical school, working in the hospitals, each hospital rotation, even during that.
Well, if we take them one by one, for example, at the laundrette, what did you learn?
That's a really good question. I learned that taught me extreme humility. It was fantastic, so grounding. Having to wash other people's clothes for £3-4, and sometimes disabled people's clothes, or others who couldn't look after themselves, soiled clothes, and that was extremely humbling. And just also seeing the people that need to use a laundrette, coin operated laundrette, and the struggles that they go through day to day.
Definitely empathy,
understanding, appreciation, and building relationships with all sorts of people as they'll come in frequently. You'd build, it's a place of community as well.
What
All
about
of
the
those
market
things.
stall?
The market stall is learning how to sell
Very precious
a pound,
lessons.
pound of tomatoes. No, we didn't sell tomatoes, but that kind of like, and that marketplace is gone now. That now we have the online store. We don't get that physical. We're not taught that. Does that make sense? We're not taught those important lessons of how to communicate value to someone.
How do you communicate value to someone?
Really understanding what this can do for them, but what their pain points might be. Asking questions, getting to know them. Dana, like, how are you feeling? What's going on? Getting to know why you even here. What can I do for you? But in a subtle way. Reading someone. Reading when you're communicating with someone, when they're switching off, when they're engaged, when their eyes light up, when they're focused, when they're with you. And then those are all important parts of the softer skills that you learn. And then getting that feedback all the time. If you're looking for feedback, it's coming to you all the time. Okay, what did I say that made Dana switch off in this podcast like 10 minutes ago? All of those things, a constant iterating learning. So the market sort of I love that, being in that kind of, helping people try on a leather jacket. Oh, wow, that looks amazing. Maybe we try this one. The fashion industry, you said you've worked in the fashion industry as well. So that sales environment is really, really, I think, a really important place.
And it's funny how we take a little bit of a piece of every single thing that we went through. So, for example, people often tell me, oh, you dress nicely, you look nice. And I never think about it. But now that we're talking about it, like, yeah, probably because I lived in Milan for 5 years and
Absolutely.
I was literally in the heart of the fashion district. And, that might have something to do with
fashion
it, right?
Capital of the world,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
When you're judged if you're not color coordinated correctly.
Oh, I have a whole episode on the judgment in Milan. Yeah, but that's a whole different story. So you've shared already quite a few moments from your childhood, but what do you think were the ones that were critical in shaping your character and the belief system that you have now?
I think my parents, my parents were really, really critical. I think important in all of this for everyone as part of their story. And one of the things that really shaped me was the self-belief. And that belief came that you can achieve anything in life. Really came from my mom. She used to drill that into my brain, like religiously. That if that person can do it, why can't you do it? You have to believe that you can do anything. And that came from my mom reinforcing that value system, that belief value system. And that's the biggest gift that we can give the younger generation, is the belief that they can achieve anything that they want to if they put their mind to it. And when younger adults don't have that, it's just so sad. I used to do mentoring in schools in the more relatively deprived areas in London, and I remember one class where we were teaching 15-year-old children about access programs into medicine, where they didn't need to get the top grades, but they can go into an access program and get lower grades. And we were asking them, what do you want to do? And there was a mechanic. I want to be a mechanic on a news agent. So no one said a profession. And I was asking, I was like, why doesn't anyone want to be a doctor or a professional or a lawyer or an accountant or a business owner? Or why are the aspirations so low? And it was because they grew up in environments where they felt they were limited. And so they all had that limited mindset where they felt that it's not for them. That's not for me, doc. I can't. That life isn't for me. It's not meant for me. I can't do it. I haven't got the things or the resources around me to do that. So just So giving people the ability to believe that they can achieve anything, and we really can in the Western world. There's so much opportunity for us, and particularly in this time and age where access to information is so easy.
Yeah, it really is about mindset. It really is about mindset. And it struck me, I was thinking as you were speaking about how many successful men and guests on the podcast as well I've spoken to that all saying the same thing, that this unwavering self-belief has been instilled by their mothers in their childhood. So it's the moment of appreciation to all the great mothers out there.
Amen.
But yeah, that's that's one of the great, I think, female contributions. And when, you know how they always say, you know, behind, beside, around a great man, there's always a woman, there's always a great woman. And I think this your example and many other guests before you, it starts very early on, and I think it's not that often spoken about, you know, especially in the Western society where everything's very individualistic. Oh, I did this and I achieved this and I achieved that, yada yada. Have you read Outliers by Malcolm? Okay, so you know, by Malcolm Gladwell, great book, and it speaks about how your outliers, your number ones, your best of the best, how this aura, this halo of genius can be easily debunked if you actually look at all the coincidences and little steps and helps and people that were crucial in them actually being able to become who they are. And that's not to say, of course, that they haven't put in the work and that they're not outstanding in their career. But all I'm saying is people that do get ahead, they often have this thing in common, which is this fantastic upbringing that comes from their parents, which is, I think we're all eternally indebted.
Absolutely. And we are a product of our environment, and we are completely a product of our environment. And you know, I often reflect on one of the things that gave me that raison d'etre as well, is the appreciation of the generational hardship that came prior, that my parents went through, but my grandparents went through, and my great grandparents went through. You know, and that hardship and the fruits of that labor increasing with every generation, where we're now at a point as a family where, you know, we're touch wood, you know, being able to give our efforts to the highest walks of society, you know, and to support them, to, you know, heads of states, royal families, high performers. It's amazing. And life can change in a generation so much, you know, within 15, 20 years, maybe, 20 years ago, I was working in a laundrette, you know, washing people's clothes and I remember we got Shoreditch House opened around that time, or they must have been open maybe a bit before that. But we got a little contract where in summer there's, if you've been to Shoreditch House, they got a pool there. They get really busy, their pools, and their pool towels, their internal laundry couldn't handle them, because we're on my dad's business is on the same, you know, is on the same road as Shoreditch House. And so we used to do their towels. We used to wash their towels when they were so busy. And it's just so funny, you know, as a late teen, like doing all of that, driving the van, dropping them off, picking them up, and looking at this members club and, like, you know, just looking at it and thinking, yeah, one day I'll probably be a member. And now I'm a member there and I'm at the other side. It's just fascinating how life can change so much in a relatively short period of time. And as long as you're appreciative of even I think, you know, be appreciative of the difficult moments that you go through. And it's hard to be, really, really is difficult. But those are the times that build you, and stay true to your value system, and don't let, you know, this is just for me, just reminded to myself and articulating it. It's now in the world, so I'll be holding myself to account and putting a mirror to myself. You know, don't let fame, don't let money, don't let materialism overtake you.
Never.
Yeah. And that's why I like spiritual practice, because it gets you in the mind of appreciating that all the material things need to be kept in front of you, not inside your heart. Yeah. And there is a bigger purpose, and gratitude is number one, even for the hardships that we go through. And the nice thing in spiritual practice is a belief that there's a life after this life. There's an existence after this existence. So even if we go through a really difficult period, if we've had a tragic life, or people around us have tragedies, there is a period after this where there will be bliss. And it's nice to believe that, and get closer to that.
Very nice. So we got a bit more of a glimpse of your life philosophy. You've been very generous with that. I appreciate it
very much.
So if we go back to your career, you co-founded your first company in 2014 called LMS Wellness. And then in 2021, you founded Human. So looking back, what was the evolution and growth that needed to happen for you to then be able to create the state-of-art clinic that you have now?
So it was okay. There's a number of things. I think being a UK trained doctor, you're naturally trained to be compartmentalized into having limitations in what you and in your confidence to be able to move people's health forwards, right? So you will work with the tools that you're trained with, and you'll stay within your lane. Okay, and then going into the private medical world with LMS Wellness, my sister was the founder, I was the co-founder. Um, started to give the confidence and the space to be able to take innovations in aesthetic medicines, dermatology, skin, hair treatments, and trial them on patients and see the success of them based and make your own treatment plans and your own algorithms of care based off a good understanding of science. And that was, that was great. That gave me a real confidence. And then the other thing, as you were talking about earlier, how you work with AP, you're mentioning LMS Wellness. We created that brand, and my sister's wanted to position that brand as a kind of as the Chanel of the aesthetic world, medical aesthetic world. And it was very forward thinking as a brand, and that positioning was great for that, for what it was offering. However, it didn't sit with my value system when I was trying to develop a health program that and delivering healthcare. Having a kind of luxury by invitation only business didn't really apply and sit congruent with a healthcare company or a healthcare mission driven company. And that's where we realized that actually I needed to create a new brand, Human, to deliver a kind of more a healthcare company that was positioned for everyone, that it was accessible, that was not just for people that wanted to look at the best, and which were serving a different community almost, or a different pain point. So
did you always have that grand vision for Human, or was it something that just happened organically, as you say, when you saw that LMS is not really serving who you want to serve?
I'd prior to that, I'd worked in, I got exposed to the stem cell industry 2007. I worked as a leadership fellow in the health system, where I wanted to drive innovations into the health system. I worked in prison medicine, driving telemedicine into prison medicine, worked with diabetic patients, making expert diabetic patients teach other patients how to manage their condition. All of those experiences really were tapping into the fact that I wanted to be someone that was bringing new things in that were having positive impact, and to accelerate those things that were taking too long to get into society. And I realized that the NHS wasn't the right environment to do that in, because it's a really big bureaucratic healthcare system. It's hard to get change in, like smaller, more dynamic companies, you can get things in quicker. And so Human became the full circle for me, where it was like, okay, now I get to connect why I became a doctor, connect also my passion for driving innovation in, and connect ripples turning into waves, right? Making those small changes, but hopefully getting them out to more and more and more people over time. And also I didn't want to just be, a lot of wellness companies stay in the luxury space, right? They don't seek to kind of standardize and scale their expertise, right? And so I wanted to create a system of care, a model of healthcare that was scalable, right? And that would be doing things to engage younger people with free, simple lifestyle interventions that they can put into practice at a young age and not have the deterioration as much. And we're engaging them through working with our younger athletes who have a following within the younger communities, but also engage with people that are broken down and feel like they're not getting the support that they need from the health system, or the answers that they need at the other end of their health journey as well. And healthcare really is for everyone. Health is for everyone, regardless of where you're at in your journey. And you can always do things to get more out of your human state.
You mentioned functional medicine several times. Can you explain what that means?
Functional medicine is basically an approach to looking at the human body to improve function. Okay, to improve how you feel, how you operate on a day-to-day basis, rather than looking at the human body as a state of organs that and treating the organ as it breaks down, which is what traditional medicine does. Yeah.
Yes. I grew up in a household where my mom was practicing alternative medicine for pretty much as far as I was born, and even much before. And so there was always this philosophy of, again, doing less and just using homeopathic, natural medicine, plant medicine, rather than
Nice.
resorting to artificial things. And I also remembered that that she was always saying that the most of the medicine we have already inside us, and it's very easily accessible. So and also that most of the medicine that you can buy over the counter is just tackling your symptoms. So you don't want to tackle symptoms, you want to tackle the root disease.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a functional approach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice, Mom.
Yeah.
But sorry, we digressed. You were telling me about your business. And so are you planning to scale it, and how?
Yes, absolutely. So the first thing is being able to create reproducible ways of working. Okay, so we've created a way and have been working on a model of healthcare that is reproducible, that is scalable, and we're doing that through in-house training programs at the moment to train our existing practitioners. So you're not just seeing Dr. E, but you can see a health team that is delivering, that you're going to get the same quality of outcome in working in our health programs. The next is applying technology to those health programs to even make it smoother for both clinicians and practitioners and also patients to work within, reducing costs as well. And so that's basically our journey. Because this type of healthcare is not easily taught, right? It's not, there's no, particularly in the UK, there's not a standardized training program yet where you can go and learn to be a preventative health optimization physician. And there's no training programs for that yet. And so that's why it's always remained in the luxury world, where it's an independent expert who has the knowledge. You go see that independent. But we've been working hard for the last 7 years really to standardize the way we look at each human, going through a program of testing and creating algorithms of interventions that based on the imbalances and things that we're looking at and getting the results. We've seen 2,000 patients now, and we're getting amazing results with all of them, getting better and better all the time. So that's something that we have the intention of growing. So the way I see healthcare evolving is 3 things: data and evidence, systems, and education. So we want to be part of demonstrating the data and evidence of how we're delivering healthcare is impacting positively the lives of the patients that we're working with, having systems that can scale and get this out to more people, which so that's the technology piece. And using kind of how we use the various systems out there. And the third piece is education future practitioners and educating future patients, okay, of how and when to engage with this approach to healthcare, how on both sides. And so we realized that, okay, this is the only way that this type of healthcare will become more standardized and more widely available if there are companies that are delivering it like us who seek actively to build all of those 3. And that's how, or contribute to all of those 3. And that's how it will more rapidly get into society as a whole and not just be left as a luxury good.
Definitely. And I think you're doing a great job at that. If we're talking about educational part, could you speak on the science behind and benefits of some of the procedures that you offer in your clinic? So there's the red light therapy, there's hyperbaric oxygen chamber, there's cryotherapy. Can we break down the science for people that maybe have not tried these tools yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So so you've got, if you think of working with human as the healthcare program, so that's testing, that's the interpretation of the testing, finding the imbalances, correcting them, working with the health consultant and the health team on a journey. And we have programs that are ranging from 1 month to 6 months. And depending on what we're wanting to achieve, we will go through different levels of testing over that period of time. So that's one element. The second element of coming in to see us physically and experiencing these state changing therapies, and we have a combination of therapies that we use. So we use hyperbaric oxygen therapy, high pressure oxygen therapy. That's what hyperbaric oxygen therapy is. I'll explain that in a second. Whole body cryotherapy, so that's going down to minus 140 Celsius up to 140 Celsius with your head inside a cold environment, head and body. Intravenous high dose ozone therapy, that's injecting ozone and mixing it with your blood. And ozone is 3 particles of oxygen. I'll tell you why we do that and what that's for. And then different types of vitamin infusions, vitamin and mineral infusions. And one of my favorite is NAD plus therapy. We talked about that. But there are also other types of vitamin and mineral infusions that you can get, including high dose vitamin C, glutathione, and other types of nutrients you can put in for desirable effect and outcome. Let's start with hyperbaric therapy. So firstly, our philosophy in approaching all of our adoption of therapies is, how can we support your own biological systems and processes to work better? It's a non-doping approach. So it's a non-drug, androgynous, synthetic approach. It's about supporting your own cellular processes to work better. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy, one of my favorites. I was the first doctor in the UK to get one custom made 7 years ago, and applying it for pre-disease conditions. Hyperbaric oxygen works in a few ways. One, it hyperoxygenates your blood. So it increases your oxygen carrying capacity by 20 times. So you carry 20 times more oxygen than you would normally carry for a period of time while you're doing the therapy. That has a whole host of effects. That increases energy production at a cellular level, or trillions of your cells work better for a period of time. Secondly, it creates new blood vessel creation. So as we get older, our organs shrink because we get stiffening and shrinking of those micro capillaries. So this creates new capillaries and microcapillaries, so it keeps your organs perfused and delivering the nutrients that you're getting through your digestive tract and from what you're breathing. Third is it stimulates new stem cells to produce from your bone marrow. So as I mentioned earlier, as we get older, we stop producing as many stem cells from our bone marrow. And this is why intermittent fasting is very popular, because it stimulates something called autophagy, self-cleaning of your cells, replacing the old dying cells, which can linger on for longer and not clean out, creating space for new stem cells to be released. So hyperbaric oxygen therapy for us acts on those mechanisms, and then we use it to treat things like long COVID, that were neuroinflammatory, brain fog issues, cognitive issues. It's also used to support healing, any condition that you are needing to actively heal, particularly tissues or fractures or ligament injuries. It will accelerate healing. It's also really good for longevity. So it's been known to increase your telomere length, which is the strands of your DNA which correspond to how rapidly you are aging, because we don't always age at the same rate all the time. We age at different rates at different times, so it slows down the rate of aging. So those are some of the major benefits of hyperbaric. We love it. I will love it. It's one of my favorite therapies, and I hope to have more people access it or be part of that. I've been shouting about hyperbaric medicine for many years now.
Is it accessible? What's kind of the price range for the therapy?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, it's about, if you're doing, if you're doing a course of treatments, it can work out to about £100 a treatment, and in a course of 10 plus, or £150 approximately for an individual session. So it needs to be more accessible over time, and I think as we educate more and more people, supply and demand will help, and more data and evidence we produce, the commissioners of healthcare will start to engage with it, because healthcare is not free. It's only free at point of service. It's being paid for by the health system or insurance. We want to get to the point in the next few years where the insurance sector is seeing the data evidence and say, hey, actually, we want to insure our patients, our consumers, and offer health insurance for this, and then thereafter it will be covered by insurance, because there are positive outcomes from them. So that's hyperbaric oxygen. Whole body cryotherapy, for me, it's really good for metabolism, increasing insulin sensitivity, increasing the number of mitochondria. So it creates new mitochondria. and which improves your availability of creating oxygen. Because going into cold environments, your body is like, oh my god, I need to create heat. The more you do that, the better it becomes. More metabolically flexible you become. Metabolic flexibility is very important for long-term health, because we live in environments that are very lazy, and the human body becomes lazy.
That's where intermittent fasting comes in as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Periods of starvation will help, and that's what's known as a hormetic stressor, including cryotherapy. A hormetic stressor is a stressor, controlled stressor, where we get a desired positive effect and a change in our biology, and so we can real time change the way our biology has got itself into, by positively or negatively, right? So if we, conversely, if we just stay in really warm environments all the time, we're going to decrease our mitochondrial capacity.
That's where the cold plunges and cold showers come in, right?
Absolutely. I like cryotherapy, and the only major difference with cryotherapy versus cold plunging is that you're going to get more of a hormonal benefit from doing the cryotherapy versus cold plunges. So you're going to get more growth hormone and testosterone increases with cryotherapy, because it also affects your pituitary
gland. So is it good for women as well, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, within kind of normal ranges, right? Okay, so that's cryotherapy. Ozone, I really like. Ozone is, we have the ozone layer. It's O3, so it's 3 particles of oxygen. It comes down to our air as O2 because it's very unstable as O3, and so you can generate O3 through an ozone generator, and you can then, as soon as it's generated, take out someone's blood, 100 mils of their blood, mix it with the ozone. So you ozonate the blood and you re-inject that back into someone. The ozonated blood causes an increase in oxygen because it dissociates as O2 and a single O. The single O causes a bit of oxidative stress. Again, it's a hormetic stressor. Oxidative stress is generally bad, but your body responds by producing antioxidants. So it upregulates the production of super antioxidants, like superoxide dismutase, and glutathione production increases naturally. So it's a hormetic stressor, controlled environment stressor that gets your body to wake up and produce more antioxidants. And antioxidants are super important because we live in a very toxic environment generally, and our toxic load is outweighing our ability to detox. We're overwhelming their detox processes, right? And we need to detox every day from phytoestrogens, from microplastics, from our foods and waters, and all additives and preservatives from our foods and things that are sprayed on our fruit, etc., etc. So toxic load is massively increasing. So I love ozone therapy. We're seeing massive benefits for people that have autoimmune conditions or low-grade inflammatory conditions. We're recommending 6 sessions of ozone once a year for longevity, and for people that have got, and you do them back to back over a 2-week course to really accelerate detoxification, support those processes. It has a really good energizing effect as well. And I think that's just from the high oxygenation in the blood. It has a massive effect for mitochondrial function, so increases mitochondrial biogenesis, the creation of new healthy mitochondria, because the mitochondria also age, and so those stresses are very, very good for the mitochondria. Also really good for, has anti-infective properties. So we carry low-grade bacteria, pathogens, viruses, fungi, parasites within our blood and our body. We know about the microbiome that's come out in the last 10 years, the popularity and awareness of that. That's just one area, but very important. But alongside the microbiome, we're seeing in practice lots of high fungal loads in the tract, digestive tract, and in the blood and the body. Sometimes we're finding parasites as well that linger, and we think that's related to types of foods that we're eating, but also antibiotic use, because when we take a lot of antibiotics, overuse antibiotics, we dysregulate our microbiome. Our microbiome is protective against other types of bugs as well.
I've heard a lot of cultures around the world have this deworming practice that they do on a regular basis. Are you familiar with that? Can you say anything on it?
There's different ways to do parasite cleanses. Ultimately, is what you're talking about. I'm sure it's been around for a long time in terms of deworming.
But it doesn't seem like it's a part of the Western culture at all.
No, it's not really. It depends on the mechanism of the way you're deworming, right? So there's medication that you can use, which would be a part of the Western approach, but there may be some natural approaches as well That's naturopathic
Would you
approaches.
say that's a practice that everyone should adopt?
Horses for courses. Depends if it's a problem for you, right? And the only
How
way
does one know?
testing. Okay, so you test your stool, you do a 3-day stool test, and then you'll know if you've got parasites in there.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what we offer, especially if there's any signs suggestive of that. That's the ideal gold standard way to do it at the moment. So I can't really comment on the actual techniques that other people use, because I don't know what you're referencing to in terms of what techniques they use.
No, it was just something that I read about several times recently, so it came into my
were they like
field of
juicing
awareness.
or
No, just literally the fact that you're Latin
You can.
America, in China, and like even in Russia, it's a common practice, whereas I barely hear about it ever here. So that's why I wanted to ask whether that's something that you know about, you advocate for, that's necessary.
Yeah, I think we do look for parasites for sure, and traditional medicine doesn't really, only if it's an obvious problem. I think we live in very sterile societies in the West as well, right? Like our environments are extremely sterile compared to other environments, so our exposure to parasites theoretically is less. However, when we do go into other environments, we're more likely to get parasites if we're not been historically exposed to things in the past. That's just the way the human body operates and works.
That's why every time you go to India or Morocco or wherever you go, then Bali even, you get a high chance of getting
food poisoning. And absolutely. And just be conscious, when we're raising children, not to be overly sterile in their environment. And one of the reasons we're seeing a lot of eczema, hay fever in younger children is because of raising them in extremely sterile environments. So ozone's great for anti-infection, low-grade infections, energizing mitochondria health benefits, and antioxidant and detox effects. Okay, so you're asking for a quick scientific lowdown. I'm doing
I'm learning. I'm making a whole file. I'm gonna be the expert now.
I'm trying to just get through this as quick as I can. So hyperbaric ozone therapy, cryotherapy. Red light therapy I see as a polishing treatment. I don't see it as like a game changer myself. I think if you use it regularly, it can help at home for circadian rhythm. Transdermal absorption can help with your musculoskeletal system to some degree, but it's not one of the more medical, more powerful treatments. So we use it in combination with our cryotherapy after they do a cryo, just to bring the skin temperature back up in clinic. So that's the red light therapy. But we also use it systemically in your blood, which not many people do. So when we do an IV, you can choose to do it with the laser light in your blood. So blood is activated by the red laser light, which activate the mitochondria to produce ATP at the cellular level. Different laser wavelengths as well, so you get different colors of lights. Yellow we offer, which stimulates vitamin D production and serotonin production. Blue, anti-infective. Green, oxygen carrying capacity, and red for an ATP production. So that's, you can also use it to treat into tissues, to enhance healing of soft tissue injuries. And the people that trained us, the doctors in Germany and Austria, where we have societies for medical laser application, they are using it into tissues where there's soft tissue, localized tumors growing, to see tumors shrink. Really fascinating. So that's laser light therapy. Hyperbaric cryo-ozone laser light, NAD is the final one I want to talk about. NAD is a vitamin B3 derivative. It's found in all of our cells, particularly our mitochondria. NAD plus we're seeing amazing results with, fantastic results. Now, just like stem cells decrease, our production of stem cell decreases as we get older, we also know that our levels of NAD plus decreases. By the time we're 40, we've depleted half our natural stores compared to a younger version of ourselves of the NAD plus. NAD plus is critical to take oxygen out and make cellular energy. So without it, we go into anaerobic respiration. So, which compared to aerobic, in the presence of oxygen and NAD, you produce 2 ATP versus 16 to 32 ATP. So if you have NAD and oxygen, you produce 16 to 32 times as much fuel versus if you don't have oxygen or NAD. So so we love that. It's also really calming. Really calming. I'm finding that because it's a precursor to glutamate, it calms people's nerves down, so they feel a lot calmer. And because of that, it's used for withdrawal from cravings, sugar cravings, from alcohol withdrawal symptoms, for any kind of neurobiological dependency. it really helps calm that down because it works on improving glutamate levels, which is really fascinating. We're seeing great results with that. So I'm really pleased with NAD. I'm seeing some phenomenal results, and I do recommend that
Can you take it as a supplement?
there are precursors. You can't take NAD plus as a supplement. It's not bioavailable orally, and it can't get into the mitochondria and the cells in that form. You can take precursors like NMN and nicotinamide riboside NR, and there's a lot of and I would say that, but the most powerful way to do it is intravenously, NAD plus itself, because not all of the precursors will turn into NAD. Okay, we're not sure from person to person how much that varies. I think in younger people it's brilliant. Take NMN, it's fine. But if you want to get a boost, you can do the NAD plus as well, and the levels are going to rise a lot faster. So that's NAD, and then we have other special prescription formulas of vitamins according to what you're missing.
Bespoke, depending on the person.
Yeah, bespoke, and also depending on the condition that they're facing. And we will be able to support them appropriately off that. So yeah.
Well, very extensive explanation. Thank you. You've educated me for sure. I hope people benefit from this knowledge as well. But all very, very curious things, and I'm looking forward to trying. I've tried localized cryotherapy, but I haven't tried the full body cryotherapy, and neither have I tried the hyperbaric oxygen chamber.
We'll have to get you to come down.
Sounds like it. Well, sounds like we do, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the business model itself. So I've seen you have your own supplement line. I can imagine that you have a lot of recurring customers coming back. So what is the key to this type of business? What is the key to making it successful?
I mean, there's different ways to deliver this type of business. For us, we're at the medical end, and what I mean by that, the prescription end. So we're at the end of prescribing for each person the right approach for them according to their budget, timeline, availability. We're seeking for this to be a healthcare model, a model of healthcare that can sit alongside traditional medicine in the future, that traditional doctors can refer into, that patients can understand and appreciate. Okay, if I want to improve my health, I can engage with a healthcare model like this. There are other ways to deliver this, and you'll see lots of kind of places that offer hyperbaric and cryo and IVs popping up around town in the kind of wellness end or the retail end or the fitness end, where people are almost self-navigating what they think is best for them. We like to prescribe people the approach that we think is best for them according to understanding what's going on in them. So in our approach, we start with you. We understand what's going on in your health. We go through a full consultation and what you're looking to achieve in your life, and then your budget, timeline, availability, and we tell you what the best value for money is and move you forward from that approach. So that's what we're looking to build, and we're delivering now, but we're looking to continue building and delivering that, because I think that people are getting confused out there. As a doctor, I was confused trying to navigate red light, oxygen, cryo, mushrooms, supplements, so much. It's so confusing.
The wearables,
but you hear so much good. Like you listen to podcasts and people will swear by this. And if you listen to some podcasts out there, you'll find that if you listen to high performance podcasts, Huberman or Peter Attia, there's so many good podcasts out there. David Sinclair's podcast, Mark Hyman's podcast, and you make a list of all of the things they recommend. That's going to be 100+ supplements,
And then you overload the liver, and then that's a problem now.
Yeah, I mean, but what's right for you, right? And the human body needs different things at different times, depending on what's going on internally and externally, and how you're looking to drive it, right? So if you're going to drive your car through snow, you're going to put snow chains on, yeah? And so it's the same thing. If you're driving your body through different terrains at different times, that's what the human body does, right? Human life does that. At certain times we're driving it through a really stressful period.
Well, how often do you do these tests then to check where you're at?
Once a year.
Once a year.
Okay. Ideally. But even just doing it once, you'll find that you can get the same test done with your GP or in traditional health system, and they will tell you that there's nothing wrong. And then you come to us, and there's never been a patient in 2,000 patients that we've not found imbalances that we're seeking to improve. That's because we're looking at your bloods in a more optimal range, functional range perspective.
Rather than dysfunctional.
Exactly, rather than major dysfunction, not even just dysfunctional, major dysfunction, where your normal range.
Yeah, you're looking and you're like, is there anything we can improve? Rather than, are you dying?
Exactly, basically. Yeah.
Bit of a difference right there.
Exactly, yeah.
So when I look at human, you've not only thought about the functionality and the kind of the medical and benefit side that you can give health-wise to the clients. It's also a very cool looking place. Like, it looks like a futuristic design hub from the future, right? So where does the inspiration for that come from?
Well, the 2 in human is all about you 2.0, right? It's your upgraded self. And so we wanted to create a space that you could walk into where you're going into the future. You're already stepping into a place that's taking you outside of the regular world, that you're feeling that this is a place that I can become a better version of myself. I can see myself in the future. And so that's why it's very important for us. And when we designed it, to have all those kind of futuristic design principles. And I love the fact that you tell me it's like stepping into the future. But I want people to appreciate that the future is now. It doesn't need to be, oh, this is a desirable thing I can do in the future. No, the future can be now. You can very quickly change your state. You can get yourself out of feeling low and fatigued and anxious very quickly. 90 minutes, 60 minutes.
Couple of minutes with breath. Absolutely, yeah. And so there are things that you can do very, very quickly. And so that's why we wanted to create a kind of space that's also a hangout space. We've got a bar there, a health bar where we do events and where people congregate, where we have alternatives to alcohol and where we're using mushroom powders and herbs to simulate different states. Sounds like my type of place.
Yeah, it is. You need to come over. And then we go downstairs in the lab where things get a bit more serious. We have the therapies on the health side. We also do a lot of therapies on and looking good as well, on improving skin, on muscle composition support, and hair as well. So, and we're constantly looking to bring innovative services in to get the best results, and to build data and evidence around
What
them.
does innovation mean to you?
Innovation means to me, it doesn't mean quality improvement, right? And a lot of people confuse quality improvement with innovation. Innovation to me is something that's more disruptive, that's changing philosophy, that challenges the status quo, and shakes you up a little bit. That's innovation, right? How we went from telephone, the way we used wired telephones to wireless telephones to now using emails on our phones as an example of kind of like massive transformation and innovations, right? Changing behavior. And I think what we're doing is innovative. It is changing your perception on how you engage with your health and how you engage with healthcare. And so for me, I do believe what we're doing is disruptive to healthcare. And we want to continue challenging people's perception on when to engage with healthcare. So important. Don't wait until you're so late and of what you think you should engage with, or what you've been taught that you should engage with health. And if they say to you there's nothing wrong but you don't feel great, there's probably something.
You probably do know better.
You know better.
It's your body.
You 100% know better. Yeah, and start going through that journey of looking for those imbalances and start with the foundational things. And go on that journey. Yeah,
I love that. Mo, I like to finish my podcast with this one specific question, which is, what's your recipe for happiness?
I think it's the recipe of happiness are the ingredients we spoke about in this podcast. We spoke about some amazing things. Definitely acceptance, letting go, gratitude, connecting to a higher purpose, mission, value system, community, interdependence, and don't make materialism your god.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello friends, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe and share it with someone. I would love to hear your feedback and suggestions as to what guests you would like to see on the show next. See you next week.